In this series of lectures that we're going to be doing together, we're going to be looking at the question of who is Jesus. And we've titled this series, Your Christ is Too Small. And not because we want to insult anybody by a title like that, but because I'm convinced that there is much we all have to learn about the full identity of Jesus of Nazareth. And to do that is no small task, because there are all kinds of conceptions of Jesus that run about in our culture. How many of you here in the studio audience have ever heard of C.S. Lewis? Let me see your hands. Okay, most everybody's heard of C.S. Lewis, and he's famous for writing children's stories as well as some serious works in literature and theology. And perhaps his most famous series is what's called the Chronicles of Narnia. Is there anybody here who's read the Chronicles of Narnia? I figured that you would have read the Chronicles of Narnia. What's the chief character's name in that?
Aslan.
Aslan. And who is Aslan?
He's the lion.
The name of the chief character of the Chronicles of Narnia is Aslan, and Aslan is a magnificent lion. But Aslan, in the story, is the symbol of Jesus. And if you're not familiar with the story, let me take a quick reconnaissance of what happens in these chronicles. These little children go to England and they do what little children do. They explore the back rooms of their relatives' mansion, and they find this neat old wardrobe, and they begin to explore the back edges of it. And lo and behold, the back of the wardrobe enters into a strange and marvelous land, the land of Narnia. And the whole 7 volumes of this goes through several segments of these children's experience in this fantasy land of Narnia, which is filled with all kinds of symbolism. Well, what I want to look at real briefly is this, that after the first experience of the kids in the land of Narnia, they come back, and then they resume their normal lives in England until the next summer when they return to their relatives, and they go through the wardrobe again. And they enter again into the wonderful land of Narnia. But this time, everything has changed. They can't find their bearings. The buildings that they had remembered from the year before are in ruins. And what the children don't understand is that though only 1 year of time had passed in England, thousands of years had passed in Narnia. So they can't find their bearings. And they're lost, and all kinds of terrible things happen to them. And then one night, as they're beaten and bloody and ready to succumb to despair, and they're seated around a campfire, suddenly this shadow emerges on the edge of a clearing, and little Lucy, the heroine of the story, looks up, and she sees Aslan. And she's so excited, she runs up and she grabs this lion around the neck and hugs him and tells him how much she loves him, and she pets his mane and everything, and he lets her ride on his back. And she says, "Oh, Aslan, you're so much bigger than you were last year." And Aslan smiles at the little girl, and he said, "Well, Lucy, actually, it hasn't been just a year, you know. It's been thousands of years. And the truth of the matter is, honey, I haven't changed a bit. I'm the same size right now as I was 1,000 years ago. I look the same, I act the same. For you see, honey, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. But I've noticed something strange, and that is that the more people get to know me, the bigger I look to them." What an insight that C.S. Lewis gave us in that little children's story, because that's part of the message of the New Testament, isn't it? That the more we examine the person of Jesus, the more we probe the work of Christ, the larger and the deeper our understanding of Jesus of Nazareth becomes. But as I said earlier, there's no agreement among people as to who Jesus really was. And what I want to do in our time together is look at it from several different perspectives. I want to go back into the New Testament, back into the first century, and ask questions like this. How did people in the New Testament react to Jesus? Who did people say that Jesus was? And then in another segment, ask this question. Who did Jesus say that he was? In another segment, we'll say, who does God say that Jesus is? And we'll approach it sort of in that way. So let me take a minute and look at a passage in the New Testament that's a very famous passage, and one I think most of you are familiar with. It's the record of a meeting that Jesus had with his closest group of friends, his disciples, at Caesarea Philippi. And you know, Jesus' ministry had been very active. He was involved in the countryside teaching and preaching and doing miracles and so on. But it was also part of the style of Jesus' ministry from time to time to pull back, get away from the crowds and spend some time alone or just with his intimate friends. And here we find him just with his closest friends in Caesarea Philippi. And we read the text in Matthew's version of it, in the 16th chapter of Matthew, in verse 13, where it says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, who do men say that I am? Jesus pulls them aside and he said, okay guys, what's the scuttlebutt? What's the conversation in the villages? How are the people responding to me? How am I being perceived? If we would say it in Madison Avenue terms of today's culture, Jesus is asking his disciples, what's my image in the marketplace? And so the disciples begin to give Jesus feedback to this question. And they say, well, Jesus, some say that you're John the Baptist, some say that you're Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. The word that we're getting on the grapevine, Jesus, is that there are people out there that think you're John the Baptist.